is still kind of a disaster tonight. A lot of people without power. The Texas Public Utility Commission says the state had very little margin of error, it turns out, in its energy grid. Yeah, turns out to be absolutely right. The commission described the situation as very scary. Now, we know exactly why that margin for error was so tight: green energy. Because politicians benefited from it, wind turbines wound up generating about a quarter of Texas's power. It got cold last night, and the windmills froze, and as a result, millions of Texans are freezing. Several have died. Mike Taylor knows a lot about energy. He's the owner of Combined Energy Services in the state of New York, and he joins us tonight for some perspective. Mike, thanks so much for coming on. Were you surprised by what you saw happen in Texas yesterday?
Boy, Tucker, I was really surprised. I never would have expected to see icing like that in the state of Texas. We're used to that up here in upstate New York. You can see the weather.
Yeah.
But once I saw the destruction in Texas, the icing of the solar panels and the wind turbines, I just, I look at it in our world and I can't imagine how it's going to work.
So it seems like if the whole point of putting so-called green energy out there is because you think the weather is volatile, maybe you would have factored that into your decision. It seems reckless, just from a civilian standpoint, it seems kind of reckless to set aside 25% of your power grid for windmills. Do you think that it is?
Well, Tucker, I don't know enough about windmills. They're not that prevalent in this area. But what I know is in New York State, where 72% of our electric is produced from fossil fuels, and the remaining 28%, only 5% comes from solar panels or wind. So with New York State's new green initiatives they have on the table, phasing in over the next 30 years, very hard within 9, I don't really see how we're going to increase that number to ever make it work. The disaster we saw in Texas, I think, is nothing compared to what's going to happen here if we try to just rely on those alternative energies. I think we need a common sense mix, and I believe things have been improving drastically over the years, but we just can't flip the switch as fast as I think people would like to.
It seems to me, again, from an outsider's perspective, that we've allowed lunatic ideologues who know nothing about science or engineering to have a lot of control over our power grid. Do you think that's why? Shouldn't we let engineers make decisions about how our power grid runs, or no?
Oh, I would definitely agree with you on that one. I mean, this is proven. Our winters up in the Northeast and all across the northern United States are much more severe than they have in Texas. I can't imagine how it's going to work in the long run. We see in New York State, it's looming in the next 9 years, we're not going to be able to install any fossil fuel appliances, such as a natural gas or propane gas or a home heating oil furnace or boiler. So 9 years from now, we're going to be forced to tell our customers they have to use electricity. On top of that, a lot of homes are not set up to have the amperage to allow to convert to electric. New York State, we have some of the highest electric rates in the country. So how are we going to switch from fossil fuels to a more expensive product? I just can't imagine. On top of that, Tucker, in New York State, they're proposing on the floor in our state assembly and the Senate right now carbon taxes. They want to carbon tax all our fossil fuels. So that's gasoline, diesel, natural gas, propane, and home heating oil, everything. So a carbon tax on top of what the pandemic with a New York State's $15 billion budget deficit, I can't imagine how we're going to be able to do it. How can anybody afford to get to work or even heat their home?
I mean, outside of New York City, Westchester County, and the Hamptons, New York is a poor state. Drive around it, and you will find that out very quickly. It's going to hurt the people there. Do you think Andrew Cuomo always seems to me like he's doing a Goodfellas imitation, but I guess he's not. Does he know a lot about home heating policy? Is he like an expert in HVAC? Or why is he weighing in on how people heat their homes? Do you have any idea?
I can't tell you. I'm sure his home is warm in Westchester or Albany, wherever he is. But the people in New York State are struggling. And if we're going to tell them that you have to remove your natural gas or propane, any of your heating appliances, and you have to go to electricity, and with it, that electricity has to come from clean energy, Tucker, doesn't exist. Only 5% now comes from alternative energy. We have hydroelectric. We're not building any more of that in New York State. So where they think within 9 years we're going to start phasing out rapidly fossil fuels, it's unbelievable. So where these policies are coming from, I think that our elected officials in Albany are out of touch.
Well, they're very in touch with their campaign donors who will now have a monopoly under state law for your home heating. Oh, it's perfect. I love it. Mike, I appreciate your perspective.
Tucker, thank you for having me.
Thank you.